Russia's invasion of Ukraine sent shockwaves across the world, reverberating through international corridors of power and everyday lives alike. The West responded with an unprecedented weapons sanctions, aiming to isolate Russia economically and politically. These weren't just strongly worded letters or symbolic gestures. This was economic warfare, designed to cripple Russia's economy and pressure Putin to back down. But have they worked? The impact has been profound, yet the results are mixed. The answer, like most things in geopolitics, is complicated. While some sectors have been hit hard, others have found ways to adapt. These sanctions are a big deal, affecting not just Russia, but the global economy. We're talking about freezing assets, banning banks, and cutting off access to vital technologies, which has ripple effects worldwide. The goal? Make it clear that invading your neighbor comes at a steep price, a price that affects ordinary citizens and global markets. But Russia is a big country with a lot of resources, including vast reserves of oil and gas, and they've been preparing for this kind of economic showdown for years, building up reserves and seeking new trade partners. This is a story about unintended consequences, shifting alliances, and a world grappling with the fallout of a conflict that has reshaped the global order. The sanctions have led to new geopolitical dynamics and economic strategies. Buckle up, because things are about to get interesting. The world is watching, and the stakes have never been higher. The first salvos in this economic war targeted Russia's financial system, aiming to cripple its financial infrastructure. The West went after the heart of Russia's economy, its central bank, which plays a crucial role in maintaining financial stability. They froze billions in foreign currency reserves, essentially cutting off Russia's access to its rainy day fund, a move designed to weaken its financial resilience. Then came the banking sanctions, which further tightened the noose around Russia's economy. Major Russian banks were cut off from SWIFT, the system that enables international payments, making it nearly impossible for them to conduct business globally. This was a big deal, as it disrupted the flow of money and created uncertainty in the financial markets. It made it incredibly difficult for Russian businesses to trade with the rest of the world, leading to a significant economic downturn. The goal was to trigger bank runs and economic chaos, putting immense pressure on the Russian government. Russia fought back, introducing strict capital controls to stabilize the ruble and prevent money from fleeing the country, a defensive measure to protect its economy. They also looked for ways to circumvent the SWIFT ban, partnering with other countries to create alternative payment systems, ensuring they could still engage in international trade. The financial war was on, and both sides were digging in for a long fight, with no clear end in sight. The stakes were high, and the global economic landscape was being reshaped by this intense conflict. Russia is an energy giant, supplying a significant chunk of Europe's oil and gas. The West knew that hitting this sector would hurt, but they also knew it was a powerful lever to pull. The EU, heavily reliant on Russian energy, hesitated at first. But as the war raged on, the EU took the plunge, announcing plans to phase out Russian oil and gas imports. This was a bold move, but it came at a cost. Europe faced soaring energy prices and a scramble for alternative suppliers. Russia, meanwhile, wasn't caught flat-footed. They pivoted east, ramping up energy exports to China and India, who were more than happy to scoop up discounted oil and gas. This energy war was reshaping global supply chains and creating new geopolitical realities. The West wasn't just targeting Russia's finances and energy, they also wanted to cripple its military capabilities. Enter export controls restrictions on selling Russia critical technologies like semiconductors, aircraft parts, and advanced machinery. The goal was to starve Russia's military-industrial complex. No more high-tech components for your tanks and missiles. But Russia has been adapting. They've been stockpiling components, using third-party countries to circumvent restrictions, and even resorting to scavenging chips from household appliances. The tech embargo is a game of cat and mouse, with Russia constantly seeking ways to plug the holes in its supply chains. Section 5. Luxury lost. From iPhones to imported cheese. Remember those fancy European cheeses and Italian suits that Russian elites loved so much? Gone. The West slapped sanctions on luxury goods, hoping to turn up the heat on Russia's wealthy and powerful. The idea was to create a sense of discontent among those who benefited most from Putin's regime. But while the oligarchs might have missed their yachts and private jets, the impact on ordinary Russians was limited. Russia found ways to replace some imports with domestic production or goods from friendlier countries. The luxury goods ban was more of a symbolic gesture, a way to show that the West was serious about punishing those close to Putin. Section 6. Travel restrictions, grounded flights, and rerouted ships. Remember the good old days of hopping on a plane and flying to Paris for the weekend? Not for Russians anymore. The West closed their airspace to Russian airlines, effectively grounding their international flights. On top of that, they imposed sanctions on Russia's shipping industry, making it difficult for Russian vessels to access international ports. The goal was to isolate Russia, both physically and economically. But Russia found workarounds. They rerouted flights through friendly countries and relied more on their own airlines and shipping companies. The travel and transport restrictions were an inconvenience, but Russia adapted. Section 7. Digital Iron Curtain, the battle for Russia's internet. The West also took aim at Russia's access to information. Tech giants like Google, Facebook, and Twitter faced pressure to limit the reach of Russian state media. Some companies even suspended services in Russia altogether. The goal was to counter Russian propaganda and prevent the spread of disinformation. But Russia had been preparing for this moment. They had already been building their own domestic internet infrastructure and promoting homegrown social media platforms. The digital Iron Curtain was descending, with Russia seeking to control the flow of information within its borders. Section 8. Propaganda wars, silencing voices, amplifying narratives. The information war was in full swing. Western governments accused Russia of spreading propaganda and disinformation about the war in Ukraine. They moved to restrict the reach of Russian state-controlled media outlets like RT and Sputnik. Social media platforms faced pressure to remove content deemed to be Russian propaganda. Russia countered by blocking access to Western news outlets and social media platforms within its borders. The propaganda war highlighted the growing divide between Russia and the West, with each side accusing the other of spreading lies and misinformation. Section 9. Secondary sanctions, the global pressure campaign. The West wasn't just sanctioning Russia directly, they also went after countries and companies that were seen as helping Russia evade sanctions, or providing material support for the war effort. These secondary sanctions were a way to pressure countries to pick a side. They targeted businesses in China, India, and other countries that continued to do business with Russia. The threat of secondary sanctions created a chilling effect, with many companies choosing to err on the side of caution and sever ties with Russia to avoid potential penalties. Section 10. A world divided, de-dollarization, and geopolitical shifts. The sanctions against Russia had far-reaching consequences, accelerating trends that were already underway. One of the most significant was the push for de-dollarization, reducing reliance on the US dollar in international trade and finance. Russia and its allies sought to develop alternative payment systems and conduct trade in their own currencies. The sanctions also led to a realignment of global power, with Russia strengthening ties with China, India, and other countries that refused to condemn the invasion of Ukraine. The world was dividing into blocs, with the West on one side and Russia and its allies on the other. Section 11. The verdict: have sanctions crippled Russia? So, have the sanctions worked? The answer is complex and multifaceted. There's no doubt that they've taken a significant toll on the Russian economy, affecting various sectors. Growth has stalled, inflation has soared, and ordinary Russians have felt the pinch in their daily lives, struggling to make ends meet. But Russia has proven to be more resilient than many expected, showing an ability to adapt and survive. They've adapted to the sanctions, found ways to circumvent them, and strengthened ties with countries willing to do business with them, particularly China. The sanctions have also had unintended consequences, pushing Russia closer to China, fueling global inflation, and exacerbating food shortages in some parts of the world, creating a ripple effect. The long-term impact of the sanctions remains to be seen as the global economy continues to adjust. But one thing is clear: the world has changed, and the geopolitical landscape is shifting. The global order is being reshaped, and the outcome of this economic war will have profound implications for decades to come, influencing international relations and economic policies worldwide.